If your B2B tech company is growing slower than you want in 2026, it's not because of your product or your service. It's because you're choosing the wrong growth engine. And there are only fundamentally 4 ways to grow your tech business, and only one of them actually gives you speed on demand. In today's video, I'm gonna walk through all those different 4 ways that you can grow and the fastest way that you can scale in 2026. So without further ado, let's dive right into things. So what are the 4 growth channels that exist to grow your tech firm? Well, the first one is outreach. The second one is content. The third one is paid ads. And the fourth one is partnerships. You can build a go-to-market function around any 4 of these growth channels. And whatever you use to grow your business is going to fall under one of these 4 growth channels. And the differences between the 4 are going to be the control in terms of how much that you can do and how much you can ultimately control the channel, the speed in which you can control the channel, and also how much you have to pay to use certain channels. And so I'm going to talk through each of these individual channels and then talk through the fastest way to grow and which one you should use and maybe which combinations you should use in order to get the highest output. So the first thing that we'll talk about is outreach. Now, there's fundamentally 2 different types of outreach that everything falls under, right? You can say even, for example, like sending through a carrier pigeon or, sending through a letter is a form of outreach. But for the broad categories, we're going to talk about cold outreach and warm outreach. Now, cold outreach consists of cold calling, cold DMs, cold emails. Warm outreach, you can think of anybody who has maybe raised their hand or is a warmer prospect. So for example, referrals, lead magnet follow-ups, anybody that's opted into a funnel of some sorts. Now, to think about the 2 differences, I'll give you just a quick analogy so that you can kind of paste things together. Cold outreach is simply like going up to, let's just say, a random stranger or a girl at a bar that you meet and you're looking to get her phone number, right? She's never heard about you before. You're coming up to her for the first time and you're cold approaching her. Warm outreach would be, let's say you have a sister, she has a cute friend that you want to get to know, and she introduces you 2 together and you reach out to her on the behalf of, knowing your sister. And so essentially it's the same kind of concept in terms of business, right? So those are the 2 forms of outreach that typically exist. Now, the pros of outreach in general is that you have high control over who you contact, right? So you're the one that's reaching out to those specific person. You know exactly who it is. You have either a lead list that you've curated to match your ICP and what that looks like. It's really good for people with low budget. So if you don't have a lot of money to spend on advertising, outreach is going to be your cheapest form of advertising. And it's typically fast in terms of early traction. You can get, results right away. If you start picking up the phone and you dial or you start cold DMing people, you can get people to start booking on your calendar as soon as possible. Now, the cons is that it typically is dependent upon a human to execute unless you automate it, which we'll get into the cons of automating in a second. And the second con is there's no real leverage when it comes to outreach. So for example, as soon as you stop sending outreach messages, you stop getting clients or you stop booking meetings. You always have to send out outreach messages in order to book. The other con is that it's scalable, but it's much harder to scale. Let me kind of get into the specifics of that. If you are automating your outreach in any type of way, you're going to typically hit your TAM and sending limits. If you're automating on a cold email or cold DM platform, you're typically going to kind of run into a limit in terms of how much you can really automate that and how much you can really send. For example, like if you have 10,000 people in your total addressable market, and you send 1,000 emails already a week, ramping that up, you're just going to blow through your whole TAM in order to book more meetings. Now, if you do manual, right, you can obviously scale the manual side of things. However, you're going to need to hire people and train people in order to do more manual outreach. So it's never just like let me just turn this up. You're going to have to train them. You're going to have to build out a process. You're going to make sure they're hitting KPIs. And so there's that manual side that's more difficult to scale. That's why it's typically harder to scale outreach. Now, here is where you should use it depending on kind of the stage that you're at in business. So for example, if you are, let's say, below $1 million in annual revenue as a company, this is great to kind of bootstrap, make sure that you're getting your first initial deals to come through. Or if you have a super small TAM and you need kind of an ABM approach where you're going after, let's say, a super niche enterprise sector and there's only like 1,000 companies out there to target, it's great to do outreach because, any other form of advertising is going to be a lot harder for you to execute on with that small of a TAM. And so really that is outreach in a nutshell. It's definitely not the fastest way to scale your business, but it is great for people that are looking to start and that are below a certain revenue threshold. Now, second way that we'll talk about being able to grow your business and the second lever that you can use is content. Content is going to build authority and it's going to typically be the slowest of all 4 channels. Now, the thing with content is it's going to compound long term and you're going to create leverage with content because of the fact that, as you post more and more, as you build more of a name for yourself, it's going to grow incrementally time over time, right? One video that you post today can still get read and still get views a year from now. And the, con you could say with content is the fact that it is algorithm dependent and there's really just not much predictability sustainability to content other than the fact that if you continue to post more and more and more and more over a long enough time period, you're going to, get results, obviously, but it's going to take months to obviously monetize the content that you start to post. So really, I want you to think about content as a way to help your brand positioning, to increase your overall authority, to help you stand out amongst different competitors, but it should never be a sole channel for growth because it's going to definitely not be the fastest way to grow your business. However, content should always be applied with other channels that you're using to grow because it's going to amplify them. So for example, if you're reaching out to someone and then they look you up after you reach out to them, they're going to see you have content, they're going to be more likely to book a call with you because you aren't a ghost. Or if you're running paid ads, for example, and somebody sees your paid ads and now they're looking you up, they see you have content, they're going to be more inclined to want to book a call with you. So content should always be paired with any go-to-market motion. Nowadays, it's almost like a prerequisite to be able to scale your business and to grow in the digital age is you need some type of content. You need a website. You need to be able to say that you have a social presence of some sort because content's going to build that reputation, but it's not going to build that immediate pipeline. So that's how you got to think about content as a way to grow your business. Hey, real quick, if you're curious about how we might be able to help you guys grow your B2B tech firm, there's a link in the description to book a call with me, and we'll talk through your current situation to see if our growth system might be aligned with what you're looking for. Other than that, let's get back to the video. Okay, what is the third way to grow your business? It's partnerships. Now, partnerships are great because if you get a partnership, this can absolutely transform your business if you get one good, high quality partnership. So when you think about partnerships, think about channel partners, white label partners, integrations, affiliates, someone that you do co-marketing with, really where you're leveraging someone else's audience or ecosystem to get leads and to grow your business. And the biggest thing with channel partners or partnerships in general is that there's this thing where you can get 100 channel partners, for example, and only really one or two of those can absolutely transform your business. So, it is a great strategy to implore, and I think everyone should try partnerships in some way, shape, or form. However, it's one of those things where I don't feel like you should build your business upon because it's very relationship dependent. If one day they stop giving you business, now all of a sudden you have no lead flow, you don't really control it. And so really, I don't think it's a great way to grow your business in terms of consistency in a stable way. Now you can, for example, if you are a white label agency or say you do a lot of white label services for people, you can then promote your partnership with other forms of advertising so that you can get more people to sign up on that. But I don't think partnerships, for example, is the only way that you should grow. You should have another channel that you're building on top of this. So you can, like I said, you can get one partnership that can absolutely change your business, and it's great to include in your growth strategy, but it's definitely not the fastest way to grow your business. Now, this brings me to my last point, and if you haven't already guessed it yet, the channel that I recommend the most to grow your business fastest in 2026 is paid advertising. Now, with paid advertising, it is a pay-to-play game. So in order to advertise on these platforms, you have to pay them. But the biggest thing with paid advertising is it's the fastest feedback loop. You can get feedback right away. You can know whether or not your messaging is resonating or whether or not your offer is resonating, and it's a lot quicker than you can do with other channels. Now, the biggest pro to paid advertising is that when you find your winning messaging and offer, you can scale your company rather easily because you know exactly how much you're paying for a call, how many percent of those you're closing, and then what your ad budget needs to be in order to hit your revenue targets. So for example, if I know that I'm getting a $300 cost per call, I know that in order to scale my business, I need 10 calls and I need to close 2 of those every single month. So that means that I need to spend $4,000 a month on ads. And now I know that in order to just scale my spend, if I want to spend $8,000, all I have to do is just produce more creatives. I don't have to hire more people, right? Like you would with other types of outreach. And so it's a much more scalable channel that kind of gives you the levers in terms of, okay, I know if I put in X amount, I can get X amount in return. And I think a lot of founders have this misconception around ads that they don't want to waste money on ads because they don't feel like you can get an ROI because it doesn't work for B2B tech firms. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. You will waste money on ads though if you don't have a really strong offer, if you don't have a good conversion system, and you're not really familiar with how to do sales for cold traffic. Then yes, I would recommend staying away from ads. But if you are above $1 million in annual revenue, you have some cash flow that you can reinvest back into the business, I think ads are the best amplifier that you can use in order to grow your business in 2026. And so really where you are in business should kind of determine your exact growth strategy and just give you some recommendations as we close out here. If you're under $1 million in annual revenue, stick with outreach. That's going to be probably your best bet because you're bootstrapping. Unless you have funding to invest into ads, I would just stick with outreach. Now for content, I think everyone should be doing content. So regardless of the stage of business that you're at, you should be posting, you should have a nice website, you should be focusing on blogs and SEO, whatever it may be, so that you can stand out amongst your competition. Now, if you're from $1 million revenue to about $5 million in annual revenue, you want to make sure that you're using ads. This is going to help you accelerate your growth targets and make sure that you're hitting certain numbers numbers a lot quicker than you would with other channels. And at any stage, you should also be using partnerships. Now, my biggest recommendation for you is if you're above that $1 million in annual revenue, throw in paid ads with content, really use it as a system to grow fast in 2026. Now, if you're thinking about running paid ads, but you don't know exactly where to start and you have no idea how to run paid ads, go ahead and book a call with me. I'll be happy to walk you through our strategy, how we help B2B tech firms scale with paid ads. You can see our full system and see if it might be able to help with you. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Take it easy, guys. Ciao.